friends and fellow artists, Miss Katie here. For today's lesson, we are going to be looking at an artist named Wassily Kandinsky. He painted a lot of abstract work, and we're going to look at some of his paintings, and then we're going to do a painting of our own inspired by the way he painted. So let's look at the supplies we're going to need and get started on that. For this lesson, you're going to need watercolor paper, some scrap watercolor paper for testing your colors, pencil, good eraser, a black Sharpie or another permanent marker if you have it, some soft synthetic watercolor brushes if you have them, water for washing your brushes, and of course watercolor. You'll also want to grab a paper towel or rag, and a bonus item would be some lids for tracing circles, maybe a ruler or some other type of stencils or things you could trace to make some geometric shapes. So I'm going to put up a reference for you all to look at. This is going to be images of Kandinsky's art, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him while you look at these images. So Kandinsky grew up in Russia in 1866. He played music as a child and always loved music and colors. When he first became an artist, he was influenced by painters like Monet, composers of music as well, and philosophers. He did a lot of painting that you would see of that time, landscapes, paintings of people, portraits, but it was later on, in about 1909, that Kandinsky began to think that he didn't need a particular subject to make art, but he could use shapes and colors all by themselves, and those could be art. He was known to be the founding fathers of abstract art. Abstract art means that it doesn't have to look like something in particular. It can just be made up of shapes and colors and lines. So he really felt that music could be seen through his work, and he was very influenced by music. He felt like when he painted, he was putting together like a musical song that you could be seen on his canvas. He felt that different shapes represented different feelings. In fact, he felt that the circle was a spiritual shape, and that the triangle was aggressive. He also felt that the square brought on a feeling of calmness. So he really used a lot of these shapes that we know as well as shapes that we don't know. We call those organic shapes in his work. So when you do your piece, I want you to look at these paintings of his and become influenced by them. You may use organic shapes and geometric shapes in your work. And maybe you even want to put on some music to listen to and maybe paint the way the music makes you feel. And think about how Kandinsky painted and listen to music and see what you can come up with. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to get started on your painting. And if you want to come back and pause this part of the video so you can just look at his work, that would be great. All right, let's get going. To start your painting, I want you to look at Kandinsky's work and try to imagine where you can kind of use some of the shapes or angles that he used and place them in your own way on your paper. So I see that he used a lot of circles, and I'd like to start with maybe a few circles on my paper. You can freehand them. Remember how we kind of looked at drawing a circle by turning our paper? And you could also trace them if you would rather. Now, be sure that you're drawing very lightly for this step of your project so that you can be sure to erase it when it's time to do that. Let's start then and throw some lines in here. We're gonna just kind of throw some lines in various ways and angles. I see that he used a lot of these kind of checkerboard type line making. I think I'll put some of those in. I like this arc situation happening in one of his pieces. I'm going to contain my drawing to the inside of my paper and not have anything going off, but that's just me. Now, I think this line's a little too long, so I'm going to erase this one. That's why I'm drawing nice and light. Now I think it's time for some triangles. And really, you guys, you're just going to be making lines as you see interesting throughout your piece. There's no wrong way to do this. You're just going to be influenced by his work. Like I said, you can put on music if you want, or you can just sit in the peaceful, quiet space of your home and just kind of work on building some interesting parts of your painting, soon to be painting. Okay, I'm gonna keep working on this a little bit longer and maybe speed through some of this, and then once I'm done with my pencil, I'm going to outline it. Then I will catch back up with you guys and show you what to do next. I've begun to line my piece. I just wanted to check back in with you guys and show you that that's simply what I'm going to do, is line this. I'm probably not going to show you this sped up because you'll know what this looks like, but I will mention that as I'm lining this, I may decide to leave some things out or add things in. You know, so don't just be sold on what you have exactly. You may look at it as you're finishing and say, it could use another dot or two here. So keep your mind open about it, and I will show this to you after I get it all lined and erased. I have finished lining my piece. As you can see, I did add quite a few extra things to it as I went along. At this stage, if you have tape, as we did in our bunny pictures, you could go ahead and tape the edges down. We're going to be using watercolor. Now, if you don't have watercolor, by all means, you may go ahead and use colored pencils, crayons, markers, whatever it is that you have. If you do watercolor, though, make sure that the marker that you used is a permanent marker, because if it's not, your lines will bleed everywhere. So for the first thing we'll do on our watercolor is we're gonna make kind of a light wash to go over the background first. We're gonna get a lot of this background part painted before we start doing all of our detail. And the way we're going to make our paint nice and light is that we're going to mix it over here in our palette side with lots of water. Now I have a little dropper here that I'm going to use, but if you don't have that, just go ahead and take your brush like this and just add lots and lots of water. And you may decide you want to make a couple of washes for your background. Maybe it's a couple different colors. Maybe it's even 3 different colors. Now, the way you know you have a good watercolor brush is that it's pretty soft. Pretty soft. If your brush is not pointy and stiff like this, it's not going to hold as much water. So make sure if you can find one to use a softer brush. So let's mix up a color. I see that he used a lot of this kind of light, very light, kind of orangey, kind of warm color. Maybe even some yellow and maybe even a touch of brown. This kind of peachy color in the background. Let's test it out. Yeah, that looks good to me. So I'm going to put this color in some places of my background. And it's okay if you get it on top of some things because it's so light that we'll just paint right over it. But some places you may want to leave so that you can paint on the inside. Like that circle is big enough that I'll just leave that blank. I can kind of paint around some things, and some other parts I may just paint right over. So as you can see, I'm keeping this all very wet. And as this is wet, if you want to switch your color, you can do that and you can blend your colors together. Now, will all of the colors of the rainbow blend nicely with this orange? No, not necessarily. So you're going to want to think about that. And if you're not sure, go ahead and test it on your tester paper. Orange and blue are across from each other on the color wheel. So when they mix together, they're going to kind of neutralize or make sort of a brown tone that you may or may not want. So I'm thinking going more in the, maybe in the red. And then maybe to purple at some point. We'll see. And as I'm mixing here. Now also, if you can remember, if you did the last video with the bunnies, once you have it painted down once, you don't need to go over it again until it's dry. If you just keep painting over and over and over, things are going to get weird real fast. It's not always going to look great. So just keep steady, keep moving, and eventually you'll wrap it up. So I'm back, and well, to tell you the truth, I had to wait quite a while for this to dry, and you will have to wait also for yours to dry so that you don't have a lot of mud happening when you start to paint things together. Now, if you want to know an expert tip, that is that anytime you're doing watercolor, go ahead and do 2 of them so you can paint on one, then you can paint on the other one while your first one is drying. So now that this is mostly dry, we're going to go through and paint colors all around. And I want to skip around quite a bit so I don't run back into the problem of things getting muddy. So I will start painting on this and then kind of speed things up. The best thing I can tell you guys though is to use your lighter colors first and then work to your dark colors. And I'm just going to go ahead and start painting one thing yellow, and then what I'll probably do is go ahead and use this same yellow and paint it somewhere else. That way I'm repeating my colors throughout my painting. As I was looking at his work, I noticed quite a lot of use of black, and I was thinking at the very end, maybe you can go in with either some black paint if you'd like, or you can use a thick black Sharpie if you have that, and add some black detail in at the very end. So be sure to repeat your colors, and at this stage you can either paint directly from the pans if you'd like, or you can mix softer colors to the side as well. So I think what I'll do is I'll paint on this for a little while, skipping around. Be sure to skip around. Don't paint wet things next to each other. And then I will tune back in with you guys and show you what's next. As this is drying, I can see a couple of places where my paint was wet and it kind of leaked together. So if you have some places like that, if they bother you and you want to try to fix them, one thing you can do is you can go back over and paint again once it's dry. Now it has to be dry for you to try this, otherwise there's really no point. So I'm just going to paint over that and it should make it better. Now, when I'm done with this, I was thinking these last places that I haven't painted yet, I'm going to make them black. And I did not include thick black Sharpie marker on the supply list, but I feel like that would be something that would be great to color this in with. The other option, if you don't have that, is to just paint it with black watercolor too. So let me get my marker and I'll show you what I was thinking. What you could do is you can decide which parts are going to be black. Maybe you just focus on a few focal kind of points and you can outline them first like this. I'm going to do this shape, these little guys, and then maybe behind this squiggle. And then once they're outlined, and you know, maybe you leave some things white because it looks kind of cool with this thick outline too. But once they're outlined like that, then you can color them in. And that way you have a nice bumper and you're not getting all scribbly outside the lines. So I'm going to finish this up and then I will show you how it looks when I'm all completed. All right, I am wrapping this up. I've got a lot of black I've put on here, and then I started thinking, you know, it might be nice to go ahead and kind of re-outline some things with the thicker black marker just to have a few more things pop. So you could definitely do that. The other thing that might be nice is to use other markers, colored markers, and color some of your detail in with those. That may be really helpful to some people. So play around with it. Really, there's a million ways you can execute this project, and I have faith you guys are going to come up with some really cool stuff. So I'm going to finish this up and then I'll hold it up for you. All right, so here is my finished Kandinsky inspired art. And I actually found one that I had started a while back for another lesson. So I encourage you to do multiple pieces. I think it would be great. You know, whatever you have time for, if you enjoy doing it, do a couple. And as you're working on them, work on one for a little bit, let it dry, and the other, because as watercolor goes, you really need to wait for your layers to dry. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you at our next Zoom lesson, and I hope you had as much fun doing this piece as I did. Until then, bye-bye.